Hi, my name is Kissi, and I'm proud.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. I am here. You are here. Kissi Frost is here. I'm so excited. We met at Uncanny Experience this past year and started following each other on Instagram. And now you've gotten suckered into coming onto my podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome, and I'm so excited to have been suckered into the podcast.
Good. So one of the things that we had talked about a little bit, like off camera, but I'm really interested in is sort of your, I guess your origins as an X-Men fan. That's something that always interests me with people.
Yes, so I'm English as a second language learner, and at my school, it wasn't super duper well done. Um, but so one of the things that kind of helped me with actually getting excited to learn to read in English was the after school program that I was in had Spider-Man comics. And I was like, I need to know what is happening with this guy. And then the next comics that I had access to at that program were X-Men comics. And I'm like, this Spider-Man guy is cool, but these guys are way cooler. I need to know more about these dudes. They're awesome. And so that's how I started getting into them. And Storm was my favorite because, I mean, like, what better role model for like a kid coming from an immigrant family? She was awesome. And then, of course, when I was very little, the OG Fox movies came out. And I was like, I know these guys. I know who they are. So I just, from a very, very young age, have been very much ingrained into X-Men.
Where you said immigrant, where did your family immigrate from?
Denmark.
Oh, okay. Okay. The best way to say it is you're like English is so good. Like if you had never told me, I would just assume you were like born and raised in Minneapolis. I wouldn't have like even thought it otherwise. So I'm glad comics played some kind of role in that. That's great.
Yeah, we kind of shifted back and forth when I was little. We I spent a lot of summers kind of going back and forth between America and Denmark, because like basically all of my family is over there. So they wanted me to be able to, you know, interact with American culture while still having a connection to my own family and my heritage, which I feel insanely lucky
Hmm.
that I was able to have that because I know that's not the case for most people. So I feel very, very lucky in that regard.
Yeah, that is amazing. Unfortunately, the majority of Americans have never been outside the country, and even more unfortunately, have very little interest in cultures outside of the country, which is like probably a topic for a whole different podcast somewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, but to have that like that double background and double cultural exposure is amazing. And a question that just comes to my head off the top of that is: are comics a deal in Denmark at all? Like, do they exist? Are they a thing?
They are actually a huge deal
Mm.
in Denmark, but it's very like it's how comics are in Denmark is how I have been told by friends of mine is kind of how comics used to be in America. In a lot of ways, Denmark is very forward thinking, but in a lot of ways, they are not like stuck in the past, but they are very like traditional. And in grocery stores, you will still see comics on the rack near the checkout. And whether that be like original Danish comics or like X-Men and things like that, or there are some very popular series of comics for kids in Denmark. There's one called Wendy, which is like a girl and her horse. And then Anders N is incredibly popular in Denmark, which is Donald Duck, but the Danish name. He has his own line of comics, and they're incredibly popular in Denmark. And those are just where you would generally see magazines in like Target or Walmart. It's just comics. And then every now and then a tabloid,
Hmm.
but that's how it's structured over there. And so I grew up like when I would see my cousins in the summer getting just like a ton of comics to bring back home because like there just wasn't as much access in the States. But in Denmark, I could just like get a ton super easily.
That,
So they are kind of like, I don't know if like superhero culture, just in the way that it is here, is as big a deal, but it's just more like, oh yeah, they're a thing. They're just like everybody knows,
mhm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. That's interesting. That takes me back to the day, because being the older fellow that I am, that's as a kid, that's where you got comics. They were at the grocery store, they were on the end cap, they were with the magazines, they were on spinners. I don't know if you've ever seen a comic book spinner, but
Yep,
those are a big
that's
deal. Yeah, that was always the thing, and to myself to this day, I have to be mad at myself because I feel like I could be a retired multimillionaire right now if I had taken care of those comics as a kid. But you'd go mow somebody's lawn and you'd get paid and you'd get on your bike and you'd ride to the grocery store, get the latest issue of X-Men, sit in front of the store and read it, and then fold it in half and shove it in your back pocket of your jeans and ride your bike home. And I think how many of those issues today are worth how much money if you have them in mint condition. That kind of like, I mean, I've always had reasons to want to go to Denmark, but I think you might have just added another one.
oh yeah, it's definitely like in some ways there are little bits of time capsuling.
Hmm. That's really cool. I love that. I thought it was interesting. You said that Storm was one of the earlier characters that you latched onto. I know you had mentioned being a great role model. Do you feel like there was anything that really beyond that really endeared you to that character, really make you latched onto that character that you can think of?
Um, I always was very much endeared to just like warrior women and strong women characters, especially, and she very much fit that archetype. Um, Especially because like my mom's favorite comic book character was Wonder Woman, and she reminded me of Wonder Woman in a lot of ways.
Mm.
So they were kind of like my two like these are the this is the peak female form is badass woman
Hmm.
goddess type, like this is what women, this is ideal like badass woman. So it was kind of like that, and that my mom was kind of teaching me like this is role model, here you are my child.
That
But she
is.
was she was kind of a DC girly, but
Oh, okay. Well, nobody's perfect. That's okay.
that's okay.
Yeah. I always find it interesting 'cause I feel like a lot, not all the time, but a lot of times with people who are X-Men fans, when you find out that they became an X-Men fan as a child and you find out what character it is within the X-Men realm that they first latched onto, oddly enough, that can tell you a lot about that person, like right off the bat. And it's always phenomenally interesting talking to different X-Men fans, and they'll be like, "Oh, I really identified with so and so because," or "I really identified with so and so because." So I always kind of love hearing those stories.
Yeah, mine was it was Storm, and then when I got like a little bit older into like my tweens, I was like, this Magneto guy, he's making a lot of points. Are we sure he's the bad guy? Or am I just I'm getting to be an angsty teenager? And then I grew up and I'm like, nah, I was onto something. Little me
Hmm.
was cooking. I knew what was up. I knew what was up, even
That
as
was
a kid.
Yeah, well, that was always kind of the fun path of Magneto because in the comics, if you ever go back and I don't know if you've ever gone back and read them, but the comic book starts in the '60s. He's very much your cardboard villain.
Oh my
He's
god,
just
he's
a
so funny in the old ones.
yes,
Oh
yes,
my god, I love him in the old ones.
uh,
He's so goofy.
I know, and I love the way they moved away from that because his original name being Eric Magnus, Master of
Mm.
Magnetism, because somehow your last name that was given to you, your family generations before, has something to do with a mutant power you're going to manifest. But
Oh yeah.
um, Yeah, yeah, and then yeah, they kind of like they Chris Claremont did a lot of work with him, a lot of fun, interesting stuff that got people asking a whole lot of questions. Just like you said, is he really the bad guy or what's going on here?
Oh yeah. And then of course, like watching the movies also as a kid, I remember I know that there's a lot of problems with the third one, but I remember his speech from the third one, um, like talking to what were, I guess, meant to be the Morlocks slash the Brotherhood. Um, that kind of odd amalgamation of whatever they were trying to do there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I just remember listening to that and being like, this sounds a lot like the stories that like my grandparents told me as a kid about
Hmm.
like the war and things like that. And I'm like, I feel kind of uncomfy right now. This is very heavy.
Hmm.
I just wanted to watch a superhero movie.
Yeah, that is one thing that's very, very different with X-Men, and that which I love is that it makes you kind of like ask questions, gets you a little bit
Oh yeah,
uncomfortable from time to time, and I really enjoy it, especially when I get in debates with other X-Men fans over, well, is this person really right or is this person really right? Because I always felt like, I not trying to throw shade at Avengers or like Avengers fandom, but they were like good guys, they go fight bad guys. Batman, good guy, go fights bad guys. Whereas X-Men, there's always this like deeper societal, political, like whole point of view behind everything that I think really makes you think.
oh, agreed, 100%. Like I was my girlfriend is she's always kind of like the X-Men, but I'm dragging her into the pit
Love
with the
it.
rest of us rats. And so I recently was like, let's rewatch the old cartoon from the 90s. And just rewatching some of the episodes with her and both of us looking at each other and going, "Oh, this hits different now that you're an adult." Like, I don't remember this. Ah. And then seeing people being like, when did X-Men get woke and blah blah. And I'm like, I don't think you were paying attention.
Hmm.
They've always been like this. Where have you been?
Right. Yeah, that's the I wish I could wrap my brain around that. I really do. Like I grew up reading X-Men comics as a kid, loved the original animated series. Um and the fact that you will get X-Men fans who have done the same and as they get into their 20s, their 30s or even their 40s are one day are like just like you said, "Wait a minute, when did X-Men become woke?" And it's like, "What have you been reading the entire time?"
Right?
That you didn't under that you had some kind of blinders on that you didn't understand. I mean, it's common knowledge the whole thing began as a metaphor for the civil rights movement. And so
Right?
do you think that got left in the past and today it's just all about tights and superpowers? Like
Are
no,
you just
there's
looking at the pretty pictures? Like,
right, yeah. I never once understood that, I realize it's, not X-Men, but it was like when people got that way with Captain America like in the comics and in the movies, like when did
right?
Captain America become woke? And it's like his very first issue, he's punching a Nazi on the cover. Like,
Exactly. Like his whole deal is punching fascists. Like,
mhm.
what are you talking about, dude?
Right, right. It's mind-boggling. I think that but you nailed it on the head. I remember watching the X-Men animated series as a child, and then when it came on Disney Plus and watching it as an adult, you get like such more deeper meaning behind so many of the storylines and stuff and everything that, we were just talking about. That drives, I don't know if you when you were out on Candy if you got to meet Eric or Julia Lewald, who were the minds behind the original X-Men, the
I
animated
didn't,
series.
unfortunately. I was so like everything was so
Overwhelmed.
new because it was my first time that I was just like, I didn't know half of what was going on. Most of the time, I was just like, what is happening? And then my friend
Hmm.
Sean basically has like my Nightcrawler tail as a child leash to make sure I don't wander around somewhere. So,
Yeah, that's the great thing about Uncanny. I was fortunate enough that it was my second year, but the first year that I went, I could only go one day, and that's what it felt like. Like before I knew it was over, and I felt like I hadn't seen over half of it, like or got to
right?
experience half of it. So it's nice. Then I'm assuming you're coming this coming year, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah. That'll be so much better because then you're like, okay, you know the building, you know where stuff is, you kind of know some people, and you get to take a lot more in. But yeah, Eric and Julie Leewald, they were there both years. I had them on the podcast a while back, and she was saying exactly what we were talking about. Now when she like is on social media and she sees people who are X-Men fans complaining about the sudden wokeness of X-Men, she just wants to pull her hair out. Like, what do you think I was teaching you the entire time? What do you think we were writing these stories for? What do you think that the meaning behind them was? It's absolutely like mind-boggling.
Right. Like I know that every now and then they'll have an episode where Logan is just like punching like a space maggot for no reason, but like that's not the entire point of the show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the action is there to move the story along and to sell viewers or sell issues. But I remember even feeling that way as a kid. When I would read like Chris Claremont stuff that dealt with like the Shi'ar Empire and all
Mhm.
that kind of stuff, and I kind of thought, well, that yeah, this this comic started as a metaphor for the civil rights movement, but I mean, let's face it, we've moved away from that. We're now in space and we're dealing with aliens. And then I got older and realized, oh, it's a metaphor for like colonialism. Oh, I see what's going on here.
That's the whole thing with the Shi'ar.
Yeah, yeah, that was really like this like epiphany like went off in my brain one day.
Yup.
Hmm. So I got to ask, the your Nightcrawler cosplay was like insane. Like it was
Thank
so good.
you.
I loved it so much. Jamie, my wife, obviously you met. She thought it was absolutely incredible
My
too.
beloved.
Yeah, she's really upset that she's at work today, and I told her this morning I'm like I'm doing a podcast today. She's like, oh yeah, and so she's upset that she's not here right now. But
Please send her my love.
no promises, no promises. We have that relationship dynamic where we're married and we're best friends and we're also annoying brother and sister to each other.
That's so fair.
Yeah,
I
we
get
just
it.
relentlessly make fun of each other and harass each other, and that's what we exist on.
There needs to be a good love to roast ratio.
I think
I
so.
get it.
I think so. Yeah, I don't know about you, but like especially me, I come from that generation where if I'm not making fun of you, that means I don't like you. So
Oh, my girlfriend bullies me every day. That's how I know she
good.
loves me.
Good. I'm glad to hear that attitude exists because I think it's very healthy.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Hmm. I always kind of felt like that was the I might have been alone on this one, but I always felt like that was like part of the evolved final stage of the relationship between Wolverine and Cyclops, where it's like they were never just gonna like hug and be like, hey, we're best bros. But they had so much respect for each other, they just had to give each other shit constantly. And I loved
Oh
every
yeah.
second of it.
Oh yeah. Exactly.
Were you did you read like through the Krakoan era?
Yes, I actually I'm rereading it right now just because I was like I because when I first read it, I jumped around a lot. Um and now I'm like I should read it in order.
Hmm.
That's a thing that I should do. So I'm rereading it all in order right now. And I'm like getting back to parts that I especially love and I'm just like, oh,
Mm,
so good.
that is great. I think a lot of people I was sort of like I took breaks from not specifically X-Men but like comics throughout the years. Like I came probably about 3 years ago. I came back to the X Men after, I think like a 4 or 5 year kind of hiatus. And the way to get back into it is I just went and got the House of X Powers of X trade, the
Mm-hmm.
beginning of the Krakoan era. And I'm reading this whole thing and I'm like, this is cinematic. Like, this is
Right?
masterpiece level
Oh my
stuff.
God.
Yeah, I kind of wandered away from it because the storylines had just, to me, felt like got repetitive and got kind of stupid. And of course, you're always somewhat a prisoner to where you became a fan at. Like I really, really became a fan in like the Chris Claremont, Jim Lee '90s,
Mm-hmm.
and then for me, it felt like the more they departed from that. But Krakoa could not be more of a departure from that, and it was amazing. It was so good.
I I loved Krakoa. I I know that it was always meant to end. Like they tell you that. in the beginning, Moira looks you dead in the eyes and is like, this is going to go to shit. And then Bozo number one and Bozo number two are like, but this time it won't. And she's like, but it will, you stupid senior citizens. And she was right,
that,
um, but
yeah,
I loved it.
yeah, that's always the issue with comics. I last podcast we did it with Erica Schultz, who writes the Laura Kinney book, and I said that that's kind of the issue is that you read these comics, you fall in love with these characters so much, you want them to have a happy ending, but because issues need to keep coming out, that can't happen. And
Yeah,
I
because that
tell them,
means their story's done.
yeah, exactly. And you don't want that either. And I talk to people who have been into X-Men but didn't read the Krakoan era or anything. And they ask me like, what was this Krakoa thing all about? And I always start off by saying like Krakoa is the closest the X-Men ever came to a happy ending. Like they came that close, but ultimately the bigger the rise, the bigger the fall.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good.
I know.
Honestly, like one of my favorite things that I also like to joke with my friends about the Krakoan era is I have a bunch of friends who they don't read comics. They're not into comics. They're cosplayers, but they're not like comic cosplayers. They'll look at my X-Men stuff and be like, "That's great, honey. You're blue again. I don't know what the hell this is." Um, but I've all gotten them to just fall in love with Krakoa era Sinister.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So like every now and then in our group chats, they'll just use him as a reaction image to things.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're just like, this is our baby girl. This is that funny X-Men guy that we all love. And I love what Hickman decided was going to happen with Sinister. Just because I was
Mm-hmm.
like, this is peak. Because like he was always kind of goofy in the OG, just very like, I am evil genius, ha ha ha. But I love the direction that they went with him and how he was
Mm-hmm.
characterized in Krakoa. I
Oh, you nailed it. Like calling him Mr. Sinister was like, ooh, bad guy, sinister, and he'd kind of, I'm gonna steal your genes, ha ha ha, and run away. Um, but I think that he really earned the moniker Sinister in the Krakoan era. But in like, there was almost like a playful,
yeah.
like flippant side to him as well. But behind that, like the wheels were turning,
Oh
and it was
yeah.
it was really good.
Like he was equally like exactly equally sinister and like frightening in some ways, but at the same time I'm like, but you're so funny and genuinely charming. Like I love you as a character, whereas before I'm like, I don't really give a shit about this guy.
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
like you in that you made my girl Madeline Pryor exist. That
Hmm.
is your purpose. Now go away.
Hmm.
But now I'm like, you're Pookie. I love you. Especially
Ah.
because one of I saw someone on TikTok say that they imagine him speaking with the voice of I don't know if you've seen What We Do in the Shadows.
No, but I've had so many people tell me that I need to cosplay a character from that, but I've never actually seen it myself.
There's a character called Laszlo.
Think that's the character.
Look him up after this,
Hmm.
because I saw someone on TikTok say that they imagine Mr. Sinister speaking in the same way that Laszlo from What We Do in the Shadows does.
Hmm.
And after I heard that, I can't imagine anything different, and it's peak. It's
Is
so good.
is he the bearded kind of chubby guy?
Yes.
The same guy who was in Fallout, right?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
The one
That's
that did the robot in Fallout.
Yes, I've seen enough clips of that because over like the last year and a half, every once in a while somebody sends me a clip of him from that show telling me like, dude, you need to cosplay this guy.
I
Um,
love him. Please do
so
it.
so now that I'm like imagining that voice was Sinister, I don't know how you can't do that. Like that would be I would watch a weekly 1 hour show of just that guy playing Sinister. I would watch the hell out of
Right?
that.
Right? Like there was just and someone made like a TikTok of like they animated him, like they drew a quick animatic of him saying some of the lines from What We Do in the Shadows, of like some of his lines. I obviously can't do his voice, but him saying like, I became a vampire to suck blood and to fuck forever and things like that. And I'm like, this is just so
Mm. And now I got to
the
go on the
money I
dig.
would pay to see
Yes.
just a full show of this. I'll send you them. They're so funny.
Yes. Because if you don't, I'm going digging for them.
Oh,
Because
they're so good.
that would be absolutely hysterical. Did you catch or heard of or have any thoughts on the whole like quote unquote Hickman triad thing that was going on with Cyclops, Logan, and Jean? Did you catch any of that?
Uh, I mean, I thought it was pretty obvious. Like, I know that some people were like, that's not what was going on, but like,
Really?
bestie,
Right.
what? Be so for real. One, he's in their house. Two, he's talking about Scott in a Speedo, and Scott is saying things like, you want to see me in a Speedo. I know what you are. Two, Jean is banging both of them and kissing both of them in front of each other.
Hmm.
It's not subtext.
Right. they
And they
they
were on the issue of the Pride issue together, the
yes.
three of them.
Yes. Like the only thing that could have confirmed it more if there was a panel of it actually happening in one of the books. But
Right?
other than that, it was like you're right. It was all but obvious. And I mean, you had the whole, like you said, the Scott in a bikini, the little touchy feely. The fact that they had the diagram of like the Summers
They're home.
home, and somehow Jean Grey, Cyclops, and Wolverine had conjoined rooms, which were the
Yeah.
only conjoined rooms in the entire facility. Um, so for like editorial to go on interviews now and like try and gaslight the hell out of us, it'd be like, oh no, that's not what that was. You guys are reading too much into it. Like no, we saw what we saw, and we
I
still
think
have the
they're just
books.
I think they're just worried because they're getting backlash now.
Yeah,
But it's
probably.
like, no, again, you put them on the Pride cover.
Hmm.
We
We know
you
what's up.
you put no heterosexual characters on the Pride cover. They were all other queer couples. We know what they are. And that's
Hmm.
okay.
Yeah, yeah, and it's amazing because when you as somebody because me personally, I'm one of those like basic like straight white guys who's like been a Wolverine simp since I was a kid because he was like the first character I ever latched onto in comics. Period. That I'm like that's the guy. Like that guy's awesome. Um, and so there as you well know there had always been the love triangle, the
Mm-hmm.
Scott. Logan, and you have Gene, who's like Scott is like, oh, he's like he's the Boy Scout, he's the guy you marry. Logan, he's the bad guy. He's that edgy bad guy with the leather jacket and the motorcycle that you don't take home to mom, but God is he good looking. Um, and there was always that push and pull, and then one day Hickman's like, I've just solved the whole thing. It's this thing called polyamory,
And
and we're just gonna slide it in there.
boom,
Yeah.
fixed.
Not a problem. But yeah, I think you're right. They got pushback, and now that Hickman's gone, and Hickman, I think he's cagey with it because every time he gets asked in an interview, he's kind of like all he says is, "Well, I took storylines as far as they would let me," and that's all he'll say about it. Whereas editorial's like, "Oh no, nothing like that was going on. You guys need to find something better to do with your time than read this far into stuff."
I think honestly though, like Hickman is saying as much as he's kind of like allowed to say,
Hmm. Yeah.
which makes sense. Like I get it. But I think that it's blatantly obvious what they were doing. Like, come on.
Oh yeah. Yeah, like I said, anything. The only thing that could have taken it further is if there was a panel of the three of them in a three-way. Other than that, like
Yeah,
it wasn't exactly hidden, you know.
which like they've had sex scenes in comic books before, but like I don't think they'd have to go pretty graphic. Like the most that I've seen in comics is like a shadow silhouette of kissing.
Hmm.
So like they'd have to be real careful how they arrange lumps of people.
Hmm. You know, and I find it silly. Like I just said, you know, being a heterosexual white male, and Wolverine having been my guy since I was a kid, I think some of that pushback is where it comes from. You get people such as me who are like upset at even the slightest notion that Logan might swing the other way from time to time. To which I've made the argument, like, do you know how old that guy is?
He's been around for so long. Like
Yeah, you telling me a dude didn't slip in there on occasion? Like, give me a break.
after
Like,
hundreds of years, you've got to get like a little curious
right? Yeah,
or
yeah.
just a little bored of the same thing. Like
Right. Yeah, you spend a lot of time in different wars with different men in different trenches, and yeah, you know,
you're not
eventually,
saying that like he got lonely and tried something out with one of his war buddies. Like
right? Yeah, that's you know what that's what we need is we need like a 5 issue miniseries on like the love trials of Logan. And we'll find out in like World War II he got it on with like Nick Fury or something, and it'll just blow a
I
whole
can
lot.
see it.
Yeah, a bunch of people's heads will just explode all across the South, and it'll be amazing.
That didn't he have like a whole thing with Hercules? Like wasn't that like
I vaguely remember. I think at the time it was like I felt like they hinted at it just to like test reaction, and then
how
they kind
much
of
backlash are we gonna get if we make
right,
him gay?
right, you know,
Mhm.
because I mean his son is gay, you
Yeah,
know, and that was like when that got revealed, it wasn't a big deal, you know. To I'm sure that bothered some people, but most people were like, okay, I see it. He's kind of like a suave Metro young version of Wolverine. I can kind of see that, you know. But yeah, it wouldn't shock me one bit if you know you live that long, you figure out the spice of life. You know, you figure out you know that maybe just not one, especially when you're chasing the redhead. Not to mention, fact, if you spent that many decades chasing one girl and you finally get a chance to have her, but you got to share her with somebody else, yeah, okay, whatever. Oh, hey,
yeah,
you know what? I just realized I've spent the last couple decades on the Blackbird looking at his ass in white breeches or yellow breeches. That's not so terrible.
right. Like especially if like that dude's your bro at this point. Like
Yeah.
and they've drank together a lot.
Yeah.
Is
A
it
lot.
gay to kiss the homies at that point?
Nah,
Maybe a
bro.
little, but like,
Nah, bro. It's all good, bro.
it's all
Just,
good, bro. Just
yeah.
make out with the homies on
Right. Yeah.
occasion.
Yeah. I always think of the line from Tropic Thunder. Everybody's a little gay once in a while, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, what the hell? You've been through a lot of trauma bonding together.
yeah,
You've both watched the woman you love die several times. Um, yeah, I feel like you know, you could have a pretty deep connection with someone at that point.
yeah.
Hmm.
And then Emma's also here.
Poor Emma. Like, would you? I shouldn't say poor Emma. Would you like to be Emma? Like, just sitting there. Like, can you imagine her sitting at a table with like Scott and Jean and Logan, and
I'd be
just
so.
like just and like hearing like the psychic conversations going on and thoughts like,
Oh my god! Especially knowing that like his kid is banging all of her kids.
yeah, yeah,
I would crash out so fast.
yeah.
Like
Oh,
props to her for not crashing out during the
yeah,
entire. I would have crashed out during the Krakoan era
yeah.
if
I
I were
will.
her.
I've theorized. I don't know if you were reading X Men during the Brian Michael Bendis run. But he did the storyline, the what was called the All New X Men, where he like brought the original X Men from when they were teenagers, time traveled to the present, and they were around for a while. And so you had like Cyclops, and then you had like 16-year-old Cyclops, you know.
Mm.
Um, And for a period there, Laura Kinney and young Cyclops were dating. They were an item. And I have always kind of joked in my head that's where Wolverine first got the idea. He saw the young clone version of himself
He's
making out
like,
with young Cyclops and went,
wait a minute.
that's not weirding me out as much as I thought it would. Man, this might have uncovered a whole new thing for me.
Wait a minute. I'm just gonna copy your homework here, Laura.
Yeah. Needs to be like that Mr. Bean meme where he's like looking over the shoulder and writing down what the other person's writing.
Exactly.
Hmm. Oh God, I'm trying to figure out where to like take the conversation after something like that because it's just. But are you
I
reading
mean,
any of
we
the?
can we can look at Emma
Yeah,
because
I'm all about looking at Emma. Have been for a long
I
time.
mean, same. I used to dislike her as a kid, but I I have seen the light
Hmm.
and I love her now. Um, Mostly because she got in the way of my ship. But I realize now I'm like, oh, that's societal pressure and internalized misogyny. And then I grew up and I was
Which
like,
one? Which ship?
Cyclops and Jean. I was like,
Oh,
you're the other woman. And then I realized, no, it takes two to tango, dude. Like, what?
yeah.
You're
Well,
15. Shut up.
yeah. Well, I always felt like Scott and Emma made a better couple anyway. Like I feel like Scott and Jean had their connection because they had been through so much since they were teenagers. But when you look at it, actual personality wise, I felt like Scott and Emma made a better couple. That wasn't like sacrilegious for me to say to you, was it?
No, I think they're more stable, but I
Hmm.
think that, like, I like the thruple better, to be honest, over like the two. If like I prefer the thruple over Scott with either Jean or Emma.
Hmm.
I feel like it evens out somehow.
Hmm.
And with all of the nonsense that has happened, I think that Emma should just be with someone that can match her energy. Because I feel like at this point, Scott is not able to do that. And I
Hmm.
think she needs someone who can.
Does that person exist?
That's the problem. See, that's my problem because I want that for her, but I don't know who the hell that is.
Yeah, I mean I'm like I can't um because she does not suffer fools.
No.
So anybody who could even meet her on a power level are vastly immature compared to her.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that would take some serious thought to find out if there's somebody out there in like the X universe that would even be like worthy. Nobody's worthy of Emma. Let's be honest. I
I
mean,
mean, yeah, but
but
like the closest we can find.
right, yeah, that would at least be like dollar store level acceptable.
Exactly.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I'd really have to think about that one.
June would be kind of interesting.
Hmm.
Okay, this is wild. This is a crack ship, but I have Fantastic Four on the brain for obvious reasons. This might be stupid now that I've like thought it in my mind. Doom and Emma.
That's not that big of a stretch. They both have
Thoughts
the
and
royalty.
feelings.
Yeah, they have lots. They both have the royalty and pomp thing.
Yeah.
They're both massive egomaniacs. We already know Doom has a thing for blondes because he's
Yeah.
been obsessed with Sue Storm for how long? Um, that's interesting. That could be something.
Right?
Yeah. Do we need to call somebody?
Right? It's better than Tony.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Oh
That
God. Yeah. No, I didn't
mm,
understand that to begin with.
I know why they did it. It was very PR,
Hmm.
but like I was like, I give this 2 months
Yeah.
or she kills him.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's one of those that it had a spring fling feel to it.
Oh
Like
yeah.
even in publication, this isn't going to last very long. Yeah, let's give an X-Men character something and Tony Stark something new at the same time.
Oh
And
yeah. That's one of the
Yeah.
few instances where I'm like, I prefer the movie counterpart
Hmm.
to the comic version because movie Tony Stark, my beloved, comic Tony Stark,
Kind of a douche. Yeah.
hit that man with my Prius.
Yeah. Are you so I take it you're reading the current books then?
Yes.
Which ones are you enjoying the most?
Uh I love Storm.
Hmm.
I'm so scared for her.
Yeah, that book got dark real quick.
Oh my god. I'm so worried for her. Um Reading the stuff with Gray Malkin, well, and Post right now. Um Mixed feelings.
Hmm.
Mixed feelings. Um so like we can get into that. And then I started the Rogue Savage Land, and I have unpopular opinions on Rogue Savage Land. So
Oh,
like
okay. I'm all about it.
we
We'll
can
start there.
we can start. Okay, so I am no fun. I never really enjoyed the Rogue Savage Land arc. Um and so I'm reading this one to see like try and get a second opinion because I was like, okay, it's from her perspective this time, not Magneto's. Because it always made me kind of like uncomfy because I was like, I know that nothing canonically happens between them,
Hmm.
but the fact that there was like no confirmed age and anything like that, I was always like, especially because I read it when I was very young, I was like, I feel uncomfortable with the energy that is happening. Why does this man not have pants? Um, but I've really liked seeing it from her perspective now in this one, being like, oh, like we're actually seeing the turmoil that she is going through and not just, hi, I am lady in bikini.
Hmm.
Um, I still think the outfit is kind of silly,
Hmm.
personally.
Not practical.
No, I get like that they're trying to be like, oh, it ripped up during blah blah blah. And she could only run away with XYZ things, but I'm like, as someone that's done wilderness survival stuff, and I know that's not like a thing that most people do, but like that's not how that works
Yeah,
at
no.
all. That's it does not do that. Um,
Right.
but I came to Jesus a little bit that I would be so much more happy with Rogue's silly outfit on one condition. They give Magneto a stupid slutty outfit. If
Well,
she's running around in a thong, put him in the thong. Why is he fully clad and fine?
I don't know.
Put him in a loincloth, and then
Well,
I can be fine with it.
the one joke that I had that cracked me up, just like preview wise, like looking at the cover of Rogue Savage Land #1, is that you had Rogue on the cover in like the full like, oh no, my clothes ripped, um,
And
and then
I'm bent
stand.
like this
Yes, yes, because that's how people stand. That's how I stand.
with
Um,
my scoliosis.
yeah, get to a chiropractor, honey. And then standing next to her is Magneto, and Magneto Eric is in his full thing, except for some reason the uniform is ripped off of just his chest.
Only his tits.
Yeah, his taco meat is just out. Like it's like, and I'm like, how do you sustain that kind of injury and not be dead?
Yeah, like
Like,
Eric, what the fuck?
yeah,
Like,
I know.
why do you
Rogue here,
look
everything ripped off but her chest. You got just the chest? Like, are we okay?
again?
Yeah.
If we're gonna slutify him, go all the way.
Yeah.
Give him a silly loincloth.
That's what we got in X-Men '97. We got Magneto and a Speedo. Like
Speedo Magneto,
just
exactly.
just BDSM strung up for Bastion to appreciate all day long.
Objectify him. If we're gonna objectify Rogue, objectify Magneto, damn it, then I
Yeah.
would be so much more supportive of Savage Land. Because then
Hmm.
there's not like the weird. the age thing is still weird, but like there's not as much of a weird power
Yeah,
imbalance in
but
my brain of like fully dressed man bikini. It's like, no, you both look silly.
okay. Here's the thing, though, and I make this argument, which is that I firmly believe that Xavier and Magneto are perceived to be way older than they in canon are. Because
Oh yeah.
if you run with the notion of like, okay, X-Men number one, Xavier starts school, he's got his students there, they're all like 16, 17, somewhere in there. Xavier himself
Isn't he
is only
supposed to be like 30?
like late 20s, early 30s. He's not
Yeah.
like, but the fact that you had Ian McClellan and Patrick Stewart, who I love, playing in the movie gives everybody the idea that Xavier and Magneto are like in their 60s, 70s.
Yeah.
And as somebody myself who is in my 40s, I'm constantly like, it's not that creepy. Come on now. You know
I
what I
think it
mean?
also it's the fact that Magneto is like he is supposed to be a Holocaust survivor.
Yeah,
And so
that's
the more into the future that we get, it's like
yeah, he should be 100 by now.
he should be. And I know that they de-age him all the time because of
That.
comics.
Mm-hmm.
But like it's okay, there's still that power awkwardness. And I think it's the fact that it's like so like for me, it's like since I read it originally as a kid and I didn't know as much, I was like, why are the two characters I really like looking at each other like that?
Yeah.
I'm uncomfy.
Well, and that's the
So
issue
I
they
will
had
admit I do have a bias in that way.
in
So
that.
in that like I read it as a kid and so
Oh
like I
yeah.
know that like I will always have a bit of an internal bias of this makes me a bit squicked out
Mm-hmm.
because there's that childhood kissy that's like, ew, I'm
Right.
8
Yeah.
and I hate this.
Yeah. Well, and they always have that problem with Magneto because the Holocaust is such an important part of his character. Now,
Exactly.
when the first issue comes out in 1963, you're less than 20 years after the Holocaust. Now we're to the
Exactly.
point where it's been so long that you have to like constantly do these weird de-aging things, or the guy should not even be able to stand and have like brittle bones and on a feeding tube
Exactly.
basically.
Or they
Hmm.
like have to start over the run and be
Right.
like, and we are back at the very beginning now.
Right.
And it's
Hmm.
in like the 80s or something. And I
Yeah.
know that he's supposed to be a little bit older than Xavier, but it's still like they have to pull all of these tricks or else it just does not make sense. And then you
Hmm.
add in the timelines of like, well, then how old are his kids? And then
Right. Hmm.
there's all of that. So there's just layers upon layers of just like, how old? And honestly, that was something about the Krakoa era that was kind of nice because it's like, okay, well, everyone's getting reborn and all that. So we can just say, fuck it.
Yeah.
Everyone is generically in their 20s, 30s, and 40s.
Hmm. Yeah, that was a really genius and convenient plot tool to
Oh
just be
my
like,
God.
oh yeah, everybody's just reborn and like whatever. So if you have anything you want to change about a character, you can do it right there through some like weird glitch or trick or something with the whole rebirth thing.
Yep. And then you don't have to worry about if someone's too old to be
Yeah,
alive anymore.
right. Yeah. That's yeah. I and for a long time I'm like, it was such this big deal that Logan had gone through the Weapon X process. And that was my first question. Like when they were going to do this rebirth thing, I'm like, okay, I get it. Like Wolverine dies and you just rebirth him like everybody else, but how does he pop out and all of a sudden have adamantium again? Oh, real convenient. Forge figured that out. Like he's just got a punch
When in
bowl of
doubt,
adamantium there.
forge.
Yeah, when in doubt, bring in Forge and he'll invent something. It's like when you're writing, like you love writing a book where you get to have Forge on the team because he can fix so many plot holes.
Oh my God. His mutant ability is Ex Machina.
Yeah,
That's just the
yeah,
fact that he was only recently considered an Omega level mutant. I'm
yeah,
like, but
yeah,
he's kind of God. Like, how is he not?
yeah. Well, and it was interesting how like there were characters who've been around for a long time, and if you really like put the deep thought into their power and what they can do, and you turn that to the nth degree, you're like, like first people kind of like were got weirded out when they mentioned that Bobby Drake was an Omega. And I'm like, well, when you think about it, he can basically put his palms on the ground and destroy the planet. Like he
Yeah,
has the ability to freeze it into a ball and shatter it like an ice cube. That's some pretty Omega level stuff.
he just chooses not to.
Right, yeah. Because he's a good
Like,
guy.
he reversed global warming basically
Yeah,
at one point during Krakoa
yeah. Do you think
with a
he could do
snap
that
of his
here?
fingers.
Yeah. Well, he's one of the mutants we need in real life. That'd be amazing.
Oh my God, right?
Okay. We're getting short on time, so I gotta ask. Current books that are out now, which ones are your favorite?
Storm.
Storm?
Storm, even though it's stressing me out.
Yes. She's gonna be okay.
I know, but it's one of those things where it's like, even though I know she's gonna be okay, it's still like my heart is still having palpitations every month
Hmm. Yeah. Hmm.
because that's my baby girl.
Yeah, because
Rescued.
I don't want to say they're dragging that out to make it sound bad, but they're taking their time in a very intricate way of resolving this whole thing,
Yeah.
which to me so far has been very, very fascinating.
Oh yeah. And
Gray
seeing her
Malcolm.
interact with Doom again is very cool.
Yes. Yes. Can anytime Doom's around, as we come back to Doom, that's what Storm needs to do. She needs to be like, you know what? I got you, fam. I'll be back. And she just goes and gets Emma and comes back and drops Emma off and leaves.
And they can reconcile.
Yes, they can get everything worked out and they will be the new Marvel power couple.
Yes.
Hmm. Are you reading like we talked a little bit of, I guess not really about Gray Malkin. Are you reading like NYX or any of the X Force or X Factor series, any of those?
On and off a
Hmm.
little bit, but not like as closely.
Hmm.
Just because I've been working with volunteering a lot in my local community at the moment. So
Fair.
I've been a little behind on comics at the moment. I need to
Hmm.
get caught up.
Yeah, that happens to everybody. There are times, even though I do an X-Men podcast, it's like there are times where I'm like, oh my God, I haven't been to the comic book store in a month. I got to go down there and like get my stack and like crash read so I can get caught up on everything. But some of those I wonder about, like X Force and X Factor. They're not terrible, but they're not like, oh my God, there's a new issue out. I got to go get it right now. Like I kind of take it or leave it. NYX I think is really good. I'm really enjoying that series. Um,
Oh, love magic though.
oh yes, and we're only one issue in.
I know, but I love
Oh,
it. Give me
I
more.
know. Did you get did you get to meet Ashley Allen?
Yes. She's so sweet. This is the second time I've met her, and
Mm,
she's so nice.
she is. I kind of like I realize everybody has their own personal choices, but I kind of get a little bit bothered that she doesn't have a social media presence because she's like somebody I would 100% follow on Instagram,
Right?
Facebook, or whatever because she's so cool.
Right. I believe she's only on Twitter, but she's not super active, which I can't imagine why.
Right. Especially
I have
on
a Twitter,
Twitter.
but I've like abandoned it. I don't
Yeah.
post on that anymore at all.
Yeah, I don't think I've logged in like 3 years or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do the blue sky thing, but yeah. And have you been reading the Psylocke series at all?
No, I am woefully uneducated on Psylocke. I like her. Not so much Betsy. Like, but I need to dig into the meat of her more because I
Hmm.
like her, but I just haven't like I haven't really dug into her. And I have no good
Hmm.
excuse. I don't know why I haven't. So maybe this is my calling to do so.
There it is. That's a good series. I think we're 3 issues in now, and So far, it's good. Like you can always tell whenever they give a character a solo right off the bat if it's gonna make it or not. And I mean, we found out one issue with Magic, like that
Yeah.
issue came out, and you're like, okay, yes, let's do this, let's go. Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, there we are. We are up against the clock. So we're gonna say goodbye, everybody. Kissy, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Thank you for chatting with me. I'm sure we'll chat more in the future,
Of
and
course.
and we will definitely see each other at Uncanny Experience this year.
So excited.
All right. Goodbye, everybody.